What do you want? I'm in the middle of a podcast. Leave me alone.
This guy who really is, I think, a bad guy. Russell, I think you are a bad guy.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what the truth.
I don't want him knowing where I live.
You can hate Russell, but one thing you cannot take from Russell is his ability to play that game.
I ain't finished playing just yet.
Welcome to the Russell Hantz Show. I have an extremely special guest today, my friend Phillip Sheppard. How you doing, Phillip?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to have the opportunity to be on the show. I've been very happy for your success. I see you've got a large fan base out there. I guess like 80,000 views
right.
and downloads of the show recently. So
right.
Congrats on that.
Thanks,
Not
man.
surprised.
Appreciate that. I want to get right into the subject of your book right now. I want to know what inspired you to write the book, and tell the audience what it's about.
Well, the book is called The Legend of Things Past. It's set in the year 2258. The strongest man on the planet is General Donovan Knight. No one knows where he gets his strength from. All they know is he's the most effective terrorist hunter intergalactically that mankind has ever seen. The then current president, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, come to him and ask him to go back 76 years in time. There's a virus killing millions of people all over the earth, and they're afraid within 3 weeks mankind may be wiped out as we know it. He calls his wife, his 2 children, steps into a time machine, and steps out of it. He realizes he's standing in the same room he's left, except he's standing in front of the then current president, the Joint Chiefs of Staff of that time. And they're going to learn what he's going to learn when he hits a button on his watch, a hologram opens up, and the general who sent him back in time is speaking. The way to get to the bottom of this story is you got to get on Amazon and buy my book.
Okay. Well, man, did you come up with all that? Like, is the book written from your mind? Because it sounds like you know pretty much about it.
Well, the book is what I call a something that I've always entertained, even to a certain extent when I was on Survivor. As you know, I create character in terms of my persona to advance myself through the game. Right. So what happens with me oftentimes is I'll be in a car somewhere and an idea will come to me. And if I get what I call a 360-degree view, like I just said to you, I can say that over and over again because that's originally what came to my mind as a concept for that story. Right. And so I played with it, and I've done that in other aspects with other stories. But people often ask, where does the creative process come from? It comes from being present and being in the moment and being prepared to express yourself, with an idea, and hopefully that people will find interesting. If not, it doesn't matter. You just do it because you feel compelled to do it. And that's what happens with me with the books.
Was that your first book you've ever written?
It's the first book that I've actually sat down myself and went toe-to-toe on a book. As you know, I did a book with my younger brother at one point called The Specialist at Costa Rica Job, whereby I took aspects of my life and came up with, again, a creative concept for a book and what we call the protagonist, the character, which is based on my life as a former federal agent, but it's been imbued with skills and assets that I never had to deploy as an agent, nor did I have them. I wasn't James Bond. I wasn't Jason Bourne. So, but we incorporated it. That was what we call a collaborative effort. On The Legend of Things Past, that's a book from start to finish in terms of, how can I come up with ideas that I could represent in the book? And then what I do, like a smart business person, in my case, I retain the services of others who participate in a collaborative way with me to make sure that the product I deliver is interesting, well-informed. For example, I didn't know about science fiction, but I did work with a science fiction expert to make sure that when I described, for example, what happens when you leap through time, that it actually made potential sense that if you could leap through time, this is how you would do it.
Right. And
sort of like Intergalactic.
Right. When you were writing the book, did you see yourself come up with different things, like maybe things that happen on Survivor, or something you've been through during, or something that maybe happened to somebody else on Survivor? Did you put the two together with some things in the book to where it inspired you any?
I created a persona, called myself the Specialist, and did some, things that I thought that would advance me through the game, and also turns out makes me very memorable.
Right.
That's pretty much what I do with the book. I come up with creative concepts. I come up with ideas for characters, storylines, and then start putting that to paper, and then working with others, as I said, collaboratively to bring it to life.
But
yeah,
I think when you played Survivor, and even still, I thought you played a great game. And I think that the way you played, that they wasn't taking you serious. And I think by not taking you serious was exactly what you were trying to do to get yourself to the end of the game.
I had several objectives when I went into Survivor. One of them was I didn't want to do anything because I'm a single parent. I have a son who's now 23 years old. He's in college. I'm very proud of him. I didn't want to do anything on the show, like go on the show and lie through the game. So in the back of my mind, as a former federal agent, known as an honest man, no criminal history, how can I play on this show and still bring some level of that into the game? So one of the ways I did that was to figure out who's the best liar in this game. And after 3 days of watching Boston Rob and say to myself, these guys will believe anything this guy says. So all I have to do is convince him to keep me in the game. If I can convince him to keep me in the game, I don't give a shit, excuse my language, what do the rest of them feel about me? That gave me tremendous freedom to be the guy that I was out there. Because once I realized that Boston Rob realized that as long as everybody was talking about me, they weren't focusing on him.
Exactly.
And I had said to him at one point, that as long as they're focused on me, if you remember what happened to you in Heroes and Villains, you went home because the people who knew how to control a game focused on you, and you went home.
Right.
That idea, once that was in his head, I knew I was safe, and then I could become this bigger-than-life character. I could say things and be, polarizing but truthful. I still had to tell the truth. So, yes, you're absolutely right. It allowed me to be underestimated by some pretty smart people. I think that David Murphy still has the moniker that he was the smartest person to ever play Survivor, literally on the IQ test that they give us. But that didn't necessarily manifest, if you will. There's one thing, as you and I know, as being smart on paper and then being smart about life.
It's totally different. You can sit there and you can pass an IQ test, but when you're starving to death and you get put in a situation where you're playing in a game for $500,000, it's going to take more street smarts to get that puzzle done than somebody that graduated from Harvard.
Well, I won't take that. I won't take that away, because I got to tell you something. When I played with Cochran, who in fact did graduate from Harvard, one of the things that kind of gets missed on him, and I reminded him not too long ago in a tweet that I did in responding to something from Rob Sesternino's show, which was one of the things that impressed me about him was that when we got out there in the Philippines and we took the first boat over from the beginning of the game to this island, he got sunburnt pretty darn bad. I have never in my life, and I've seen some pretty bad sunburns from being in the military. I've never seen anyone get fried the way he did that, just, the beginning of the game. And then another time I saw him get diarrhea, from, he'd won some award. When you get that award, they let you feast. And, of course, if you haven't been eating, people don't realize that your body basically can't handle what it's getting. He was like that. And I tell you, a weaker person would have quit. So I think that having smarts, being able to advance yourself in a game strategically the way you have, also being villainous at the same time, is a little bit of that, what I call the Harvard/street, without you necessarily going to Harvard. He had it where I would go the other way, would say he had the Harvard education, but he also had a little street because he had had a whole lot of chutzpah in the sense that he could get to that game, deal with the adversities of starvation, sunburnt, and being ill to go ahead and win the game. So, all that comes together. I don't want to take away from anybody that plays, but obviously I'm in your camp in terms of going out there and playing your heart out to get to the end, and hopefully you can win. And I know in your times out there, I definitely felt that at least on one of those, you definitely should have won.
Yeah.
So, but you gave it, you gave it your best.
I gave it my best. That's all you can do out there.
All you can do in life is give it your best.
Right. And when you went out there the second time, did you plan on playing a totally different game? How did that work out for you? And when you seen, did you know that y'all didn't know the cast? Right? I'm trying to think.
No, we didn't know the cast.
Okay.
I had an idea because, you know, when they call you back in, they bring you in with
Right,
a lot
of
of
course.
different people,
Right.
and they do that so that you can't really discern who's going to be there. But at least you have some potentiality who could be
Of
a
course.
potential returner. So I had some idea, and there was a little bit of what we call that backroom scramble where people call you up all of a sudden and want to be your
course.
friend, and you have never heard from them,
Right.
and it's like, oh, they must be returning to the game, you know. So I had
Uh-huh.
a little bit of that, but I was very candid with everybody going into it, which was, you and I know that whatever people say out here has absolutely no bearing really what they're going to do in a game when their name is up on the block, right? So
Of course.
I never put a lot of stock in any of that backroom dealing, but at the same time, when I got out there, I came prepared to be prepared to win, prepared to play as the guy who was the only guy that had gone 39 days amongst all those people that were the returnees from the favorites and the fan side. So I knew they were going to be gunning for me, and I knew that I was going to try to put something different on display in terms of not being quite as polarizing, you know what I'm saying, and
Right.
not necessarily following anybody's lead. I would say people misunderstood when I said that I brought out the BR rules. Basically, I didn't get a playbook from Boston Rob that said, go play this like this.
Right.
I observed him. I watched what he did, and I wanted to demonstrate by repeating what I said that, in fact, I did pay attention to the guy who won the previous game. Win, lose, or draw. If you win Survivor, you won Survivor. At the
Right.
end of the day, you're taking home the $1 million. And if you're coming back as a returnee, it would behoove you to say, hey, I paid attention. When I watch you play, I pay attention. There's certain people, you know, you pay attention, but your attention isn't held as long because they're
Right.
not really playing the game, right?
Yeah, and what I do, man,
So,
when I played, this is what I tell people, and what I said with Natalie White the first time I played. I said, could she have made it here without me? Answer that question. Could I have made it there without her? And I'm like, of course, I could have made it there without her. She needed me. Now, in the same, you can almost say that with your case. Could Boston Rob make it there without you? And could you have made it there without him? Do you think you could have made it there without him?
Well,
And do
here's
you-
the thing, and
Do
let
you
me
think?
just answer it
yeah,
this
go
way.
ahead.
From an analytical perspective, just the way you presented it, the odds are more favorable in my case from evidentiary. What do I mean by that? Obviously, Boston Rob was playing 4 times. Apparently, the 3 times he played prior to that, he didn't get to the end.
Right.
So I can make a stronger argument to say, in fact, he needed me to get to the end by me creating such a distraction and keeping everybody focused on me. It freed him up where the people that he were playing with, who were not you or Coach or Jerry or other people who have ejected him from the game, that wasn't there. What was there were all newbies, and those newbies were capable of being exposed to a bigger-than-life character called the Specialist,
Right.
and thereby not vote him out of the game. He can't make the same argument about what I would have or would not have done
Right.
because, frankly, there's no evidence there. But being who I am, the Specialist, I needed him as badly as he needed me. Why? Because when I analyzed those people that were out there with me, I realized almost immediately that's why I aligned myself with him in the first place was they're too enamored with this guy. They'll leave him in the game way too long, and they don't give a crap about me. And that's a fact, evidently, because they voted for 17 votes to cast me out of the game. At one point, the most in Survivor history, but I stayed. Why? Because Boston Rob manipulated them in the end to each time vote one more vote for somebody else, and they went home. So it was what I call a synergistic relationship. I'm grateful as a person who can say, I made it to the end of Survivor. I don't care win, lose, or draw. To endure that environment, as you know, the bugs, the not brushing your teeth,
Of course.
being out there with a bunch of people who don't prefer you to be in the game because they're trying to get to the end of the game to pick up $1 million. I mean, that environment is brutal. So for me to say at 52 years old, the first time I played, a person who wasn't a super fan of the show to get to the end, I'm saying something. And that's why I've always appreciated the fact that you nominated me, I think, several times to,
I have.
go to the Hall of Fame. So
I think the Hall of Fame,
you know,
and people
great.
people come at me and say, "Oh, why'd you do that?" Look, you got to the end. You played a great game. You became Phillip Sheppard. You became your own entity in the game of Survivor. You became the specialist. There's very few people that do that. Coach did that. You did that. I think I did that. Rupert did that. So it's a character that will never be forgotten, and that's rare in the game of Survivor.
Absolutely. I haven't said this to anybody before, but I'm going to say it now on your show, okay? I've retired from Survivor because I'm a disabled veteran. Mm-hmm. I've always had certain disabilities that I've never talked about. Even the first 2 times I played, I have severe osteoarthritis in both knees and partly in my lower back. That's why a lot of times when you're looking at me on Survivor, I look like I'm slightly stooped over, or I'm walking with this, because there's times when my ankle, would flare up as well.
Right.
But as I've gotten older now, I'm 59, getting ready to hit 60, the big 60.
Mm-hmm.
I still take very good care of myself. I'm 205 pounds. I got a resting heart rate of 47 right now. I'm feeling, feel incredible. But at the same time, physically, I couldn't endure the game again.
I don't know about that, man. I think you can. I think you could. I mean,
I think I could if there was enough money there.
Yeah, right. That's for dang sure. I want to ask you something, man. I want to ask you something about the first time, because it's very fishy to me that this is how it went down. When we were dropped off, me and Rob, they made sure that Rob picked in that thing first, and then I picked second. So he gets that tribe which everybody loved him. I get the tribe where everybody hated me. They had one person that told me, I found out after the fact, that said that she liked me, and that was Stephanie. Every single other person they asked the question, do you like Russell Hantz? And they said no. Could you play with Russell? They said no. Now, it's really weird to me that's how it went down. Because they were, and then everybody said, well, y'all got to pick from a thing, right? You picked a buff from a bag, and it chose the tribes. No, not really, because Rob chose first. So, and they made sure to tell me that he was going to choose first. So, what do you think about that?
Here's what I would say. Here's what I would say about that. Not to speculate on that, because as a former, here he goes, ladies and gentlemen, as a former
right?
federal agent, that is what we call conjecture without foundation, because you can suspect that, you can question it, but in fact there is no real, what I call, proof of that. And what I would say to you is,
but you as a former agent,
I could go the other way. I could draw up all kinds of speculations about Boston Rob and how everybody in my tribe seemed to automatically be in love with him from day one. He couldn't get up and go to the bathroom without him going, excuse me, guys, I'm going to the bathroom. Because they would all go down the beach together, if you remember that.
Right.
So, but I choose for myself to say, as you and I both know, in real life, and Survivor does, in fact, reflect reality. We see that more prevalently today, right now, than anything else, that these people come together from all over the country. And to the extent that the show can really know who and how people are going to operate once they get out there, that's what makes, to me,
I don't know, man, because you as a former agent,
analyze people to death.
You could do it.
You can analyze people to death, but until you get out there and start starving, the bugs start fighting, you haven't eaten in 8 days, that's when we're going to find out who you really are. And the show doesn't know that either. Right,
but they might have.
I mean, I know you've seen people think.
Yeah, they might have people.
So,
you were trained to be able to do that. You're in the military. You're a former agent. So to me, it seems like you could have. Okay, let's say you're putting together a cast and you're doing this personally. I have
drawn certain speculations. Yes, I've drawn some of my own.
Let's say you're putting it together yourself, and then you say, okay, we won't. I'm just speculating, but let's just say we want Rob to win. We want to make sure Russell doesn't even make the merge. Do you think that you can sit someone down and put together a cast that would do exactly that?
Well, like what you just said, it's like would do exactly that. Mm-hmm. That is a very huge leap, right? That's a huge leap. It's sort of like having a huge party at your house and knowing that you've invited all the people that you think are going to be a great party, and then you find out they wreck your house. Somebody in there wrecks your house. That doesn't happen to me, but I'm just saying it's like you can't pull all the punches because there's those unknown factors that you don't know. For example, Steve Wright and I had that huge incident around race when I said something to him when we were having the race wars.
Right.
There was no way CBS could have suspected that I would say anything or how his response was going to be and what that was going to lead to.
Right.
But it certainly was huge on the show, and I like to think the way that I, got played in terms of the media exposure that I got, so the things that I said at that time seemed like, oh, he's dropping the race card. Oh, that seems like it's so over the top. And yet we got, people taking a knee today for the same types of issues in terms of how they feel they are being treated in society and how society is responding to them. Very much like in Survivor, there's a moment when, like in my case, I'm the only African-American out there. I'm trying my best to get to the end. I'm trying to make a logical decision here, guys. Our rice can has a hole in it. Yours doesn't. All your members are going home. Can I have that can so I can put our good rice in that can? No. Suddenly we start raising the issues. It gets heated. That's what's happening in our real society. So I don't want to, Russell, I think you played a great game. I think that they made a terrible, terrible error when they orchestrated your departure by deliberately throwing that challenge.
Right.
Because
to be fair, we wasn't going to win that challenge anyway.
You weren't going to win the challenge,
No.
but at the same time, they threw it,
Right.
and they threw it with the intent of getting you out of the game. They were reckless, where we were unreckless, meaning the people in my tribe didn't want to get rid of the biggest threat in the game who played 4 times. I mean, if you're really there to win $1 million, you get rid of that guy, maybe not right away, but at some point you get rid of him if you're really there to get $1 million. So they probably acted, I would say probably, I'm going to say they did act prematurely when they injected you from the game. And I know it hurt you because you wanted to get to the end of the game, and you felt that you would have had a much better shot with a different group of people. But at the same time, I could make the same argument, Russell, that part of the thing that I would have liked to have been portrayed, say, differently in the media would have been required that different people come out there and play with me. So you just can't look at it that way. Each season is a new season. You haven't won, but I think you've played a great game. You've been really good entertainment for the people that have watched. You have a huge fan base. They support you. I think that the best message for you is to keep saying what a great game you played. You are a all-star. You're in the Hall of Fame. I mean, dude, you rock.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, I think that you guys, now I want to know your opinion on this because I never really said it publicly, but I think that we won the first 2 challenges in a row. I was watching Boston Rob make huge errors right off the bat. First errors was getting rid of their biggest competitor woman. That was Francesca. Second error, getting rid of Matt was a hell of an athlete, and he showed it by getting back into the game. So as we kept winning challenges, the first 2, Rob's getting rid of great players to help him win challenges. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, I told him straight up, I said, they are going to eat you up and spit you out if you take me out of this game, because I knew what was happening. I seen that we had a window. We had a window to where we could at least go to the merge with numbers. And they just didn't want to hear it, man.
Well, you got to remember that first it was Francesca
Right.
that went, and she went primarily because a lot of times I get the heat about the reason she went home. But the truth is, before we ever went to tribal council, Rob and them, meaning that group, because I wasn't part of that group. I was playing, in fact, I played most of the season by myself, isolated, if you will, only batting up once in a while to Boston Rob because none of them wanted to strategize with me. And 2 things happened. One, that at the first night we were there, it rained severely, as you know, and Francesca kept her clothes on, all her clothes on. And we were trying, I won't say we, but Boston Rob was get out of some of those wet clothes. You're going to get sick. I played this game several times. She didn't want to have any part of it. The other girls and the guys, we got out of our jeans, and we got in our underwear and we slept up in the tent. She kept her clothes on, and she got like a little bit of hypothermia. She was very sick that morning, and that carried over into the next day. So she didn't quite pull her full load. She was doing her best, don't get me wrong, but you know how it is. If they find a weakness in you in any way, everybody who's trying to be anybody but me will target that person.
Right.
I hadn't targeted her yet in the game. I really hadn't. I was looking more at Christina, because I knew that she was hunting for idols. I could see her. A lot of times I wanted her to be helping more as we were trying to construct our area. But, you know, you could tell that she was looking for something. So I thought she was the bigger threat. And, of course, correctly so, she was the one who actually got with Francesca and said to Francesca, you know, we should go pink underwear guy out. Phillip, right? Former federal agent, who cares? So part of Rob's hand was played in the sense that he already had the other people with him. I mean, from day one, I could see, like, oh my God, they're in love with this guy. How in the hell am I going to get them to look at me, the old black dude, right? So the only two people who were really seriously a threat and who were really playing for keeps was, in fact, Francesca and Christina in the beginning of the game.
Wow.
Those two individuals came to play and to win. So if I'm Boston Rob, I do get rid of her, because she's wearing it. She's making it obvious to me that she came to play, and Christina was right there with her by looking for an idol. So he correctly played the hand, a brilliant hand, if you will, that was, you know, presented on a platter for him. But he didn't make any mistakes strategically, and he won. But you know, I don't hold anybody who plays Survivor and gets to the game, into that game, and picks up $1 million.
Right.
Even in your case where you didn't win, I felt like you played a very good game and should have won at one point, and they, you know, it didn't pan out that way for you. But at the same time, you played a hell of a game, and the person who won got to the end, and they picked up the check.
Yeah. So that brings me to the second time you played, when you had Francesca there again. I mean, it's like, oh no, not again, not first out 2 times in a row. So was it her that was going first no matter what, or did she do that to herself?
Well, here's what happened again there. If you remember at the opening part of the second Caramon Island, season 26, she and I, and CBS shows this, have a conversation while everybody else is supposedly to look for water and wood, and came back empty-handed. Some of them went to actually go look for, you know, clues and idols. But Francesca, for a few moments, and Brandon stayed back to the rear. Brandon and I started constructing the shelter together, and for a second, while Brandon went to get some wood or, you know, gather whatever he was looking for, Francesca came to me and she apologized and said, you know, I just want to say, Phillip, as somebody who got to the end of the game, I'm going to listen, you know, to what you have to say. And I said, good for you. Good for you. And let's see how we can play together. But I knew at the same time that she was saying it, I said to myself, I'm not going to, and this is where being an agent, and by the way, when I was a federal agent, part of my job was to analyze people to determine whether or not they're telling me a truth or not, when I would ask them a series of questions about their background, based on information they either had previously supplied in positions of employment, or where they went to school or worked. And so then I would come back and have a conversation with them, and I could write a report.
All right.
They handed with me, had they seemed evasive to me, whatever my findings were. I did that in the game. All right. I did it, as you remember, when you and I were at Redemption Island the first time, and I said about Ralph, you're lying now. I'd analyzed that in his behavior from the way he was talking, and I said it there. Same thing happened with her. When she said to me and she apologized, and she meant it, but at the same time, I realized Francesca, being a lawyer, being who she is, being very strategic, being a person who's very, have very strong convictions about who they are, what they are, and what they want to do. I knew that was going to come to play very quickly for her. And sure enough, she immediately went back as soon as everybody got back to camp and started telling people what she thought and what she felt we should do. And as somebody who had been voted out the first time, that should have been the last thing that she should do based on that behavior, because people like Andrea were going to remember, and Andrea, being very convincing and strategic, was able to exploit that because they were going to vote Andrea. If you remember, we went to that first tribal council.
Right.
When I say we, meaning they had already determined that they were going to vote Andrea out. But in fact, Andrea turned the tables, and with me and Cochran and others, Brenda Lowe, ended up voting, Francesca out again. So, yeah, she did it to herself in a certain way, but she did it to herself not what I call with saying I'm going to go do this to myself. She did it because of who she is, and that's what Survivor's going to eventually bring out.
She's a strong woman, and it isn't going to change that when you go out there. And sometimes you have to be more submissive, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It takes a great player to do that kind of thing. But did you know that Cochran? Did you know that Cochran stayed at Francesca's house right before y'all flew out for a week? And Cochran was calling Brandon constantly every day. Cochran had his stuff together before he played, man.
Let me just tell you this. You may not recall, but you, Brandon, Francesca, and someone else I can't recall went on a canoe ride somewhere.
Me, Francesca, and Brandon.
Research on once. Yeah.
No.
Well, I saw the images of that early on, and I downloaded that. And this is me being very strategic, knowing full well I was going back to play Survivor again. So from the time I went off the show, where I don't watch every single episode of the show, I do a lot of research. So I had downloaded those images before they were even chosen to be back on the show. And then when they were on the show, I realized, these three people have already bonded. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened, with the caveat that Andrea was also part of that mix as well.
Yep.
And Cochran. But what happened was Cochran and Andrea blindsided not only Francesca, but all Brand. Yes, I knew it.
Okay.
I surmised it based on the research that I did. But again, and I remembered years earlier when Boston Rob had played, and he and the guy, I can't think of his name. Is it Leifer? The guy that he
stabbed in the back. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Well, that individual had also had, from what I'd heard. Again, this is supposition on my part because I have no factual other than what I had heard, that he had an agreement with Boston Rob. That's why we say whatever happens outside the game. A great book for you to read, by the way. Hope I don't get in trouble for doing this, but there's a great book called The Psychology of Survivor. It's written by 13 PhD psychologists, and Boston Rob's in that book, by the way, because it was published originally for the first 7 seasons of Survivor. I read that before I played Survivor, so I didn't watch the show, but I got to read a psychological written by PhD psychologists about who creates a game where you're going to take people on an island and starve them. So it had a little bit in there about Mark Burnett, at least from their what they thought of who creates that type of show. And then it also had a little bit about each player who had played at that point. Right. Let me tell you, that came in very handy when I had to strategically decide, how am I going to work with Boston Rob? And I remembered what they wrote about him in that book. So I did the same thing when I went and played the second time, in the sense that I knew it was going to be very difficult for me to get to the end of that game.
Right.
Because of people's relationships going into it.
So I want to get right to this part. I mean, this was probably going to come up. What happened with Brandon? I wasn't there. I didn't see it, and I know there was more that happened than what the actual editing was shown, because I know Brandon. And you were. Well,
here's the thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, because you were at the point to where I knew it was more than what we seen, because you were at the point where he needed to go. So what happened?
Well, there were 3 things that happened that the fans won't know, but you'll probably know as I articulate it to you here. Mm-hmm. Before the first event that evening, when we came after we went to the challenge and we lost, and we were going to have to vote somebody out that night.
Right.
You know how it is. You come back from the challenge, it's late at night or it's dark outside. He was already at one point potentially going to fight Dawn. He was that angry in his
he was hollering.
His behavior. Yes, and his display and his behavior was more menacing than somebody who's going to try to go 39 days, much less. This is the first 3 nights, guy. What's going on here?
Yeah.
You're sounding awful vigilant. And I'm thinking in my mind, truthfully, I'm going to be candid with you, like, am I going to have to defend somebody out here against this individual?
Right.
That was the first 3 nights. And as it began to manifest, I tried to take a different tack with him by saying, hey, look, I'm going to pull you under my wing. I'm going to put this in terms of, I'm not your father, I'm not your uncle, but what I am is, if this was a CEO, you remember I made a reference to a corporation because I've been working in corporate America, where I said, it's sort of like I'm the CEO and you're an upper-level management guy.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like that analogy, but that was my way of trying to pull him in and try to settle him down. I happen to believe, again, without factual data, but with supposition, that you've had situations where you're saying, listen up, Brandon, as an older, wiser guy who's kind of done a little bit of what you've done, but certainly haven't tread quite as far as you have, son.
Right.
Let me give you some advice, and it wasn't welcome or well received.
Of course.
I knew that you and I probably shared that similarity, and so that it was what it was. And as the game began to advance, Brandon, for example, if you remember the challenge where we were holding up a net and they were dropping coconuts in it.
Yeah, I did that
won
same
that challenge for him.
Right.
Brandon had it in his mind he was going to win, but he couldn't hold on, and he lost that. He then had to concede, not verbally to me or to anyone else, but I saw it on him, that you lost to the older guy.
Right.
You lost to the guy who you don't want to be losing to, but he just demonstrated strength in a way that you couldn't, and you had to give up, and he won that challenge. Even if you don't respect me or you don't like me, you got to respect this, and mano a mano. He won the challenge. I saw that on him. And rather than him embracing it like in true joy, he was happy that we weren't going to be voting somebody out that night, but he wasn't happy with me. And me being a keen observer of people's behavior, I saw that in him, but I still wasn't prepared to let him go. I called him the conqueror. I gave him a name.
Right. Right.
So I'm just saying, all this was happening, and I was trying desperately to try to keep him in the game. I wanted him to go further in the game, believe it or not, more so than, say, Eric. Right? I knew Eric had no goodwill for me. He told me that the first time I spoke to him in the game. So, but I couldn't, just like you probably have learned, and I'm not asking you to reveal anything, but I just suspect there have been times in his life where you've tried to rope him in, settle him down, and he was having none of it.
Yeah, Brandon.
So he went off and did
Brandon's personality is a little different than most people. He's hard to control in real life, much less a game on an island, and that comes with sometimes
that comes through in a way.
Yeah, and the thing is, you gain that kind of thing through age and wisdom, and Brandon needs a lot. He needs to learn. He'll learn. He'll get there. But I think that he wasn't ready.
Well, when he talked about your game, when he talked about your game, the first time he played, and he is part of building up his game, I felt that he made comments that were pejorative toward your game.
Right.
And I thought, that's inappropriate. That's his uncle.
You think he was trying to be like me?
Whatever, you're on national TV. I think he was trying to be more than you. He was like, I'm better, I don't remember verbatim what he was saying, but I do recall that it wasn't as favorable as I thought it should have been.
So do you think that whole thing was more than Survivor? More than,
of course,
trying to get to me, trying to maybe get to his dad, trying to, just more. You know what I mean?
I think he was one of the guys, and I mean this with all due respect to him, to you, that I felt like if there was anybody that I've seen and watched on Survivor where I thought, definitely the second time, more so than the first, that maybe the show didn't need to bring him out there at this time.
Right.
He's the only one that now there might be others who could say the same about me. They tried to get me thrown out of the game the first time. They went to the production people and said, get him out of the game. We think he's crazy.
Right.
fortunately, the psychologists were like, "We're not having any part of it," and I stayed in the game. So,
Right.
that was my only thing with him. I felt like, yes, he
Were
was
you
acting
were
out
you a
on
little
lots of
scared
different
though?
levels. I'm never scared, Russell, in terms of like
Like fear.
he's going to do something to me. I had concern because I am a person who's been trained. I am a military man, and there's a certain preparation that they prepare American soldiers to go do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I felt like I could assess a threat. And that's why I told you that first night I said to myself, right now, at this moment, am I going to have to do something? I don't know if you know this, but that night before we voted Brandon out of the game, Brenda and Lo and I, it was raining, and it had been raining most of the night. The crew that's there in our area, the production people all had huge umbrellas and rain gear completely covering them. We're in that shelter, rain's coming down. I've got my body where I'm just 3 to 4 inches above Brenda Lowe, keeping her dry.
Right.
And I wake up, and Brandon is leaning over me. He has a thing in his hand like he's stirring the fire with it, but literally he's less than a foot from my face. And I nudge Brenda very slowly, and so she gets up, so he has to step back, and then I step out of the tent, and I'm thinking, that's crazy. He could have poked me in the eye. He could have. I mean, that crossed my mind. I wasn't scared, but I was.
No, I hear you.
Was observing the fact that he thought, like, is he playing a head game with me? Because let me tell you, the head game is if I perceive any danger here, I know exactly what to do to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, but I don't want to go there. I don't want to see that manifest on Survivor. And I made my concerns known. So he had to go.
Yeah. Did you think that he was going to physically attack anybody? Were you concerned of that?
Yes, I felt that there was something else. One of the things that again, pure conjecture on my part, but I felt like he behaved to a certain extent. Like, I've seen guys who use steroids and then suddenly come off of those things. He had a little bit of a behavior like that. It was so like,
Interesting.
bipolar in his swing in behavior from, hey man, hi, how are you guys, to what happened there? Why is he acting like this right now?
Right.
There was some of that kind of behavior. Okay, you won't hear that just from me alone. And so that was the concern. And it was one of those things that was progressing worse and worse. It was becoming more concerning, not just to me, but to others. There were people that were prepared to cry because they were so concerned about it. I won't name names, okay? I'm sure you remember watching the show.
Right.
So, it was sad for me. I felt sad for him. I felt, as you know, I felt really bad for the fans as that episode of the show unfolded, with him going home the way he did. He used all kinds of profanity against me. He called me every name under the sun. I almost lose my cool there's one moment at the very end of that tribal where we're voting him out where I thought I could lose it here. I said to Jeff, let him go.
Yeah.
Because Jeff was holding him back. But
Right.
I didn't want to be there. But my mindset was suddenly going there because of the things that he was saying and that they were allowing him to say. I was almost as mad at production as much as I was at him. Like, why are you allowing this person to, use this kind of language? This is a family show, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that happened in a split second, but that's how my mind functioned, and I was very upset about it, and I was even more upset about it when I watched it air.
Right.
And,
was there a lot more
unfortunate
sad than what we've
also.
seen?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was at one point, you don't know this, when Brandon dumps out the rice. Right below where he picked up the thing and he dumped out the rice, there was a machete laying there. And Andrea, basically, I'm going to name her in this instance because she broke down crying. Everybody could see the knife and, the machete that was there, and he was jumping up and down. If you don't recall that, you might want to go back and look at it. But it's a fearful moment. I could tell that the other people, including production, as you know, they're there. Everybody's kind of concerned. They're not sure where this is going, okay? And so I turn and decide to walk down the beach to try to let him cool off. And if you remember, initially he starts to follow me, and he's screaming stuff and da-da-da, da-da-da. Now, I'm going to reveal this, and I hope I don't get in, hot cahoots for it. But basically, because production is there, they're filming, they encourage me to continue down the beach. I'll say it like that. I think I'm okay with that.
Right.
Okay, because it was a situation that was quickly escalating, and it was like, I'm not saying anything to Brandon at that moment. I don't remember the exact wording that I said at the time that set him off when he decided to dump all the rice out. I think he was trying to get me to commit that I wasn't going to cast a vote for him or something, and I wasn't prepared to tell him anything about what my decision was, that it's a private, something like that. And that's when he lost it. So that's what it was. And I know he was going to come home and tell you guys, but I figured in the long run, because you and I, as you know, we'd already done the charity event down in Florida, where I got to meet you, and you and I hit it off. One of my favorite pictures of all time, believe it or not, as far as being, physically looking at a photograph, was the photograph that me, you, and Brandon took together.
Yeah.
When
I just think it was too much for him.
We were in, talked a little bit. I sat at your table. Yes, that's what I think. Because I felt like you and I had kind of had a connection, even though we're totally different, blah, blah, blah. I just felt like, in mano a mano, I respect this guy. I like, the way he played the game, whatever. And then when Brandon and I got out there, I was so surprised that, because I thought for sure that you might have had an opportunity to comment to him and say, I chatted up with Sheppard. You got to watch that guy, but I think he's loyal. If you can get him in your corner, he's loyal. And I've demonstrated that I'm a loyal player. So he didn't take advantage of any of that goodwill. And so, I pulled him aside and I had a conversation with him. I don't know if he told you this. And I don't know if the show aired it or not, but I said to him, I said, I know your Uncle Russell. I had a couple of conversations with him at these different events that we go to, and I'd like to play with him. I would like to play with him longer. I was speaking to him, earnestly when I was having that conversation. So when it unraveled, I was really surprised. I was like, oh my goodness, doesn't this kid know I'm going to be in this game for a bit? The specialist will be in this game. I can help you. I helped Rob get to the end. I helped that Omantepe tribe get to the end. By some of the antics I did. So, play along and you might further advance in the game, right? So, but he was having none of it. Again, I saw that there. So that's what happened, between Brandon and I.
Right.
So,
I just think that maybe later in life, Brandon could have played that game, but he's just not ready right now to play a game like that. That's all it was.
That's what it is. A lot of people really have I love it when I meet people who have a total misconception, really, of just how hard Survivor is.
Yeah.
They think it's, like watching it on TV is one thing, because, that's the thing. When you're looking at us on television, our skin looks so good. We're not eating junk food. Mm-hmm. We're not getting pizzas and drinking liquor. And, we're drinking coconut water. We start looking good for a second, but we're not necessarily feeling 100%
That's right.
good, because we're getting eaten up by bugs, the heat alone. I mean, all the things that we experience when we're out there. And so for people, sometimes they overstep themselves in terms of their maturity to be able to handle a difficult situation where, guess what, Mr. Millennial or X generation person, you're not mature enough really to be in a game like this.
No.
This is, as James Brown would say, this is a man's world.
Yeah, it's the real deal.
It's the real deal. You got to be grown. You got to be a grown, I'm going to say it, a grown-ass person to be out there.
You know what I say, man? Just because you don't see them quit, they quit all the time mentally in that game. You check out all the time. So you don't have to say, I quit, to quit that game.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about Survivor Redemption Island, and I'm going to say it, I don't mean any ill will, but the Amentepe tribe, we could see that Steve Wright, 6'7", 271 pounds, a chiseled body.
He was scared.
We gave him a name. We called him T-Rex. He's a dinosaur who's dying, but we're not going to send him home.
With little bitty arms.
And so we kept him in the game because we could see that from little things that he would say, that he was wearing down his other players who were trying to survive, but he was saying things intermittently that would bring them down, or just, and I won't repeat them because I don't know if they all aired, but we saw it. And so, like you say, you see people quit in the game.
Yeah.
Matt played a great game. He got to the end. He kept going out to Redemption Island, but he wouldn't quit, and he kept trying to, hang
Did you
in
know
there,
Matt's an actor now? He was on Pretty Little Liars.
I have not. Well, I knew he had I always felt like he had the chops to be an actor. He certainly had the looks.
Yeah, I seen.
And he can express himself very well.
Yeah, I seen a few clips of him. He's like trying to. He even changed his name. I don't know what it is, but you could probably Google it and find out. But yeah, I seen a little clip of him on Pretty Little Liars. I'm like, whoa, 'cause my girls watched that.
I'm so happy for him. I'm happy for
He's doing good.
You know what? That's one of the things about me. I really am. I wish more survivors than us would support each other. There's been 400 of us out there. If we would retweet, as you know, you and I both do it for each other. We retweet. We mention something about the fan, or I try to throw your name in something, just so that the fans know that we're trying to, advance each other's careers and aspirations. I mean, that's why I'm on this show.
I don't know why they don't do that, man. Why more? You're right. More survivors, should do that. You don't see Boston Rob doing that. You don't see, you're not bigger than us. You're not, we're all the same. So when he doesn't do that kind of thing, or Rupert or this and that, it's like, guys, help the community. If somebody's trying to do something, help them,
Well, I'm going to say this, if you don't mind. I appreciate you asking me about my book, but I want to make it clear. I am a veteran. I'm approaching my 60th decade. I'm already in my 60th decade. My son's in college, and frankly, anyone that buys my book, you are supporting a veteran. A lot of people like to say that, we need to do more for vets, and we need to do this, we need to. Well, one of the things you can do is just go out and buy an Amazon book, an ebook for $2.99,
right,
and download it and enjoy the book, and give this vet.
I say go take it, man. Buy that book. I have
Grateful Nation.
Yeah, I bought it, man. I got that book.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And
there have been other survivors who've done things like, I tried to get Cochran and Andrea and them to mention on their shows and things that they do. And I'm like, Cochran, I'm one of the guys that help you get to the end of this game. All right. How about showing me some love every now and then? I didn't ask you for a check. I'm asking you to just say, hey, guys, check out the Specialist's new book, or, from here to here and there. And if he's listening and he checks us on the show, I mean, no disrespect to any of them, but I am asking, I'm saying it again. I'm going to be 60 come March the 12th. I'll be grateful if they and CBS would mention my book. I mean, CBS brought Boston Rob back for Caramon Islands and put him on the stage and let him introduce his book.
Right.
They didn't do that for me with my book.
That's
and I'm
messed
like,
up, man.
Come on, guys. I love you, but please, I could use the help and the support. So
okay, man. I want to ask you a serious question though, because we're talking about veterans.
Sure.
And you're a veteran, right? So I want you to, in your point of view, since you're a veteran, my grandfather was a prisoner of war in something called the Bataan Death March. He got captured by the Japanese. He was there for 2.5 years. When he died, they handed when he passed away, I was there. They handed my grandmother an American flag, and now we have, which is big news. That's why I want to talk about it. And you're a veteran. We have people protesting the anthem for their personal, what they believe the American flag stands for. Well, I've always thought it stood for freedom and what we do have in America. Now, you as a veteran, what do you think about? You can say both sides of it too. I'm sure you can understand both sides being a veteran. So, what can you think about that?
Here's my view on that. There's a couple of things I would, and I appreciate you asking me that question. I'm more of a social activist these days. I have 80,000 followers that follow, and I don't spend a lot of time talking about Survivor. I talk about serious matters, and one of these issues is, in fact, this issue with Kaepernick and others, and how and what Donald Trump, the president, has to say about it. Let me say this: as a veteran and as the son of a veteran, my father served for 23 years in the United States Marine Corps. He fought 2 tours Europe, and went to Japan, and also went to Korea.
Okay.
Okay, my father, when he came back in 1958, the year that I was born, and he came back and returned from Korea, and he has more medals. I've got his whole military file, and all the distinct. He was a gunnery sergeant. All right, he was told to get to the back of the bus.
Yes. That was
He
that.
was
What year?
told
What
in
year
Atlanta,
was that?
Georgia. Hear me out now.
Mm-hmm.
This is 1958.
Oh, okay.
In the 1960s, when I'm 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, when Dr. King and John F. Kennedy and all these other people were being assassinated,
Right.
black folks still couldn't vote. My father had already served 23 years. He retired in 1961.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So he couldn't even vote.
What's
He
that?
couldn't get the civil liberties that he was prepared to die for multiple times for his country. And I will
crazy.
tell you, as a veteran myself, and as for my father and many other veterans articulate about what I'm about to say, which is when I wear the uniform, I took an oath when I was sworn in that said I would be prepared to defend my country overseas and at home. So what is it that's at home that I would need to defend my country against? It would be anything that would try to minimize or take away the individual's liberties of American citizens. Individual liberties. I'm talking about one man.
Right.
The beauty of our Constitution is that it was done by the forefathers in the beginning that said that unless you were born free, you didn't count at the same ratio. So this country was born, if you will, with a discriminatory practice, but grateful that it is in terms of being able to recognize through the amendments, they've been able to add amendments and changes to do what the forefathers meant for themselves and then eventually to every single person in this country, which is the right to happiness, the right to live, to be free, the right to pursue whatever you want in life without having your government or police officers or anyone else try to take away any of the individual liberties that we each have. Now, when things that are occurring in our society in which we say we don't want people rioting, we don't want a movement to emerge that's a violent movement.
Right.
So we had Dr. King who spoke of nonviolence, a peaceful movement. And then we have, in today's time, NFL football players and others and veterans who say, take a knee. Put your knee on the ground to show that you are not happy with the fact that your government seems to be taking a blind eye to a great injustice when people are being gunned down, put to death without due process, which the Bill of Rights under the Constitution, you're guaranteed.
Right.
I tell you what, having grown up in a violent neighborhood in Philadelphia, South Philly, and in Atlanta, Georgia, before I ended up in Santa Monica, California over the course of my life, I know what it is to see gun violence that's not through discussion, not through debate, shot dead in an instant by either a police officer or gang members
Right.
equivalent. So I'm all about having a peaceful dialogue when a man is saying, just take a knee.
Right. Now, I agree with that, man. I do agree. I believe in peaceful protest. I think they're necessary. And the only thing, and can you see the other side of the fence? And this is what it looks like. You have those mothers that their sons are draped in that flag that died serving that flag for the protection for those people to get on that knee. And there, some people are upset about it. Can you see their point of view? I see your point of view. I get it. I understand. I don't know the struggles, but I understand it. And I believe it's necessary that something is done. I just don't like that it's done this way.
I would say to you, the fact that you and I, one of the reasons I came on your show, and one of the reasons that you and I have talked at different places and at different times, even though I know that your background and who you are and who I am are completely 180 degrees of each other.
Yes.
But one of the things that I've always seen in you and certainly in me is that we're prepared to talk about it.
Yes, of course.
Because I believe that's how true understanding comes forward. But people have to understand
No, and I see
that
you post things
as
with
a black man.
yeah, I see
as
you
a
post
black
things
man,
with the things that you like when you get together and you actually talk about it without any type of violence. You need it. These discussions need
Absolutely.
to be talked about, and they can be talked
You
about.
need to
I'm a
understand that
Republican. You're a
because this
Democrat.
country, though, I just want you to understand that because this country was born first in genocide by destroying all the Indians that were here,
Of course.
indigenous people,
Right.
who, when the Mayflower showed up, they would have starved on the shores because they didn't know how to eat. They didn't know how to hunt in this environment, this hostile environment. They got help, and in the end, they were destroyed.
Right.
So as African Americans, we look at this situation, looking at our past history of this country, in which we say, for 300 of the initial years, we were enslaved here. My great-great-great-grandfathers, I got photographs of some of these people who were slaves.
Wow.
And so I say to myself, what can I do to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again? So one of the things I can do is I can talk, I can engage, and I can protest when I hear somebody that's putting out any kind of rhetoric that's designed to divide us. Because within my own family, there are some members who are married to different races and different cultures.
Mine as well.
Within it.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm all about America being great in terms of loving and respecting each other and being prepared to die for the liberties that we each and all enjoy. But not to be saying, well, some deserve this, and because I got good genes and you ain't got good genes, you
Right.
don't deserve to get what I get. I'm against any articulation of that. And so I'd rather, again, and I want to say this, and then we can move on, which is to say that I'd rather have a man take a knee and be heard than to pick up a gun and do something like what we had in South Carolina, where Roof went in there and shot up those church where they were embracing him and inviting him in and trying to support him. We don't need that in this country. We don't need that. What we need is to be able to be fully engaged, respect the process. Is one of the things that our the First Amendment of the Constitution, the very first one, is the right to protest.
Right.
And it doesn't get to tell you how to protest, except it can tell you you can't take a life, you can't, engage in violence. But in terms of how you do that, no one gets
I
to
agree
tell you
on
that.
doing
And
it.
I'm not
Yeah, they can. They need to do it.
I'm not prepared to put a cloth. As much as I love my country, man, you're talking to a guy. I don't know if I told you this, but I drive a 1978 Buick Skylark.
Okay.
You know what my license tags are?
What's that?
Army SP4. It's Army SP4 because I was E4 rank. I was a specialist. That's where I got that from in the Army. That's on my tag. I've got military flags. I got support our veterans stuck to my car. All right, that's how I drive around in Hollywood, California, because I love my country. I love our vets. I love our current service members. I love our Gold Star families. I love living in America. And I'm prepared, as I said, I was prepared to defend it abroad, and I'm prepared to articulate in conversation support of anyone and any individual who's talking about bringing us together and moving forward as a nation.
But don't you think that there should be a protest on black crimes? That's because do you agree that is an epidemic as well? Or do you think that that's not the case?
I believe that the very issues that we're talking about, I think it's a combination of it's not an either or proposition. If you look at for example, where the significant amount of investment and opportunity is taking place, it doesn't take place in the inner city. Okay, it takes place outside the inner city.
Right.
And therefore, if that's what's occurring, that means you're creating a whole population of people who their only methods, or I wouldn't say not only their only methods, but to a significant and disproportionate portion, they're limited in terms of the education they're going to receive because it's your tax dollars and your housing rates based on the mortgages within your house that raises the monies for the schools that are developed in your neighborhoods, and thus the businesses that will come out of those environments. So it's a combination, as Popovich said. White Americans have benefited for hundreds and hundreds.
No, I
of
believe
years.
that. I believe that. I believe
And-
that.
and-
White.
and-
I believe
and that's
there
why-
is. Yeah, there is such thing as as white privilege. I am on board with that.
I'm saying because of that, that is, ghettos were created, Russell. If you think about it, a ghetto was not like, hey, let's all poor people get together and live in this rotten neighborhood where there's high crime and shoot each other.
Well, the word ghetto was created during the Holocaust.
I know,
right
Germany. In Germany.
Right.
Yes, I know that, but I'm saying, I'm just using it as a term in terms of understanding, I call severe adverse poverty, simply because there's divestiture of resources.
Same thing that they were dealing with in Germany.
Yeah. And it's been orchestrated, by the way, in times by the government.
The number one selling jersey at this point right now is the guy that came out of the San Francisco dugout. I think it was San Francisco. I don't know if it was San Francisco or not, but
I know what you're talking about.
Came out of the dugout and he saluted while that national anthem was going on. That is the number one selling jersey. So Democrats need to watch out, because we might have that same president get reelected again, because obviously the American people, due to the number one, I'm just basing it on the number one selling jersey at this time, are disagreeing. Every stadium that they kneel at, the American people in the audience, they boo them. So getting buffaloed like that.
But I don't, again,
what happens is when you get, hold on for a second.
Let's pause. Just pause right there for a second.
Okay.
From an analytical point of view, first of all, the guy that you're referring to, if you go back and read that story, he made a mistake. It was an accident. He didn't even know he was going to do that.
Well, that's still the case. Even if he didn't know he was going to do that, it's still the number one selling jersey, because the Americans, they thought that he was doing that, so now they buying his jersey. When they kneel, everybody is booing.
The same way that Donald Trump is the president of the United States. I mean, everything that we know about Donald Trump in terms of the derogatory information that came out about Donald Trump on the bus, for example, and things that he said during the campaign. There are people. We have a systemic problem in this country. I would argue that the people that are buying that guy's jersey are probably the same people that voted for Donald Trump in the first place, and will continue. And you say may in fact vote for him in 2018. Frankly, it's crazy. It's insanity to return to a 1930 era. We saw what that brought. That brought incredible bloodshed, death, mayhem, unprosperity. America is great. When I was in the service and I lived in Germany, everybody wanted to be an American. They dressed like us. They looked like us. They played our music. I could go into any white bar in Germany and I could hear James Brown or Prince or Sade or any of these groups, and they just love our culture, And so, but if we erode that culture by making it the ugly thing like we see in other parts of the world, where we're calling people heathens and this, or uncultured or uncivilized. If we demonstrate that here in America, that's not good for the country. It's not good for anybody. They really want us to grow and prosper together as Americans. It's been this thing that we don't talk about, but the people that are living that life, they know all about it. Right. And you're saying you don't want to hear them talk about it. That's not healthy, and you're going to have people taking knees, and that's all we want them to be doing.
We do want people. We do want people to talk and have constructive criticism. I think it's very important. Some of my best friends are liberal. I mean, Eliza. I love Eliza. Corinne, Francesca. We're great friends. So you can be the opposite. Me and you are total opposites. I know if I lived around there, we'd hang out together. So you can be opposites and talk and discuss matters without all this craziness that we see when it comes to people getting violent. I'm 100% against that on both sides. I do not like violence, and I think, and you're right, taking a knee is their way of protesting. I don't particularly agree with it, but I understand.
By the way, Russell, hold on a second. By the way, taking a knee is nothing new. If you go back to the civil rights movement, 1960s, you'll see Ralph Abernathy, Dr. King, Andrew Young, John Lewis from Georgia, the current congressman, who's one of the longest-standing congressmen in Georgia. Right. We always have taken a knee rather than being as part of a nonviolent movement. That's nothing new. What's new is you've got finally guys who are millionaires in the NFL, and they're no longer saying, I'm going to pretend like I don't see what's going on, man. I got mine, you got yours, so I ain't going to worry about you. That's not going on anymore. They're acknowledging it. Both white and black are saying, hey, we got this problem. America, we got to fix this, okay? And we're not going to pretend like we don't see it anymore. And right now, if we can encourage places like, Chicago, where they have an incredible amount of violence going on, and other major cities before they blow up and we have riots and stuff going on like we had in 1992 in LA when people weren't listening to what the African Americans and others and Browns were saying here, and we had the 1992 riots in LA. That's how that stuff happens, when people feel like they're not being heard. So by the NFL players demonstrating, frankly, they're doing like what James Brown did in 1968 when Dr. King was killed in Memphis at that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than having riots in the streets, James Brown went and threw some concerts for free and tried to encourage people to be peaceful, and
Yes.
they were, and it put a damper on that. The NFL, in fact, Kaepernick, to his credit, and others now who are stepping up, they're putting a lid on something that could get out of hand pretty quickly, because we're not Russia, we're not Tiananmen Square in China, where we have tanks rolling down the streets to say, hey, we're the big bad government. We're going to put a lid on this shit. And we're going to show these people they can't behave this way.
Right.
That's not the American way. And that isn't the way we're going to make anything great again. We're great because, in fact, Americans are resilient. We have the ability that when times change, we change with them. And then we make the wind, if you will, change direction and blow in our sails. We've demonstrated that again and again and again. And we're in a tricky period right now.
Right.
We got a guy, with all due respect, that's in that White House, that's in the White House, that with Puerto Rico just getting hit the way it did, no power, no air conditioning, very little water supply. And let's not forget, Russell, they're on an island. We know a little thing about an island. When the food is gone, the food is gone.
Right.
So we need to be leveraging our forces, our military, our Army supportive engineers, like this was a war, except it's on the environment, meaning the environment has wreaked havoc on that island in Puerto Rico, and we need to be sending ships there now. This instance to support the American citizens who are living there, who've depended on our service. This is no time to be looking at their bank statement and saying, hey, you borrowed money from Wall Street, you haven't fully paid it back yet, so no, we're not going to come help.
Yeah.
That is not the way we operate. I'm sorry. You're doing your bit in Texas right now. I know your publicist mentioned it to me,
Mm-hmm.
and we got hit in Florida where some of my family are at. They only have minor damage, but the point is, we've got to pull together. We can't. I'm glad you haven't given me an opportunity to speak, because you get to hear how passionate I am and how strongly I feel that we are a great nation, and we're even better when we've got tolerance for different points of view, but not talking about, focusing on somebody taking a knee when we've got the type of potential disaster happening in Puerto Rico. Frankly, we're going to get beyond this. We're going to get to the point where we're going to recognize that this national discussion needs to take place, because your child and your children's children, they deserve a better world. And they're going to get a better world, because
Right.
you and I and others are going to work hard to understand each other and move forward in a positive way. At least that's my hope.
Right. And, I want to, just make it clear. I do understand it. I understand the what they're doing. I understand why. I just, on my side, I think that it should be done a different way. That's all. But I get it. I just don't like when it's done in front of the flag. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Because I love this country just as much as you, and I love it so much that I don't like to see the flag, in my point of view, being disrespected.
Let me just say, I was prepared to die for my country, but the reason I was prepared to die for my country is because I wanted to protect the liberties that you
Exactly.
have as a private
That's
citizen.
why I'm okay
more,
with it.
I didn't do it for the flag. Russell, I didn't do it for the flag. I swear to God, I did not do it for the flag. I love the flag. I think it's a beautiful flag, red, white, and blue, the colors, the whole thing. But at the end of the day, I love the individuality
Right.
that we have in America, that we have the right to pursue happiness,
Right.
where government is not to be dictating to me. Because if you can make me worship a flag, you can then say, well, I think you should worship this. You know, the Army SEAL.
It's not the flag. It's not the material. You know, it's not the material from the flag or the colors. It's what the troops that's died for it. It's what it stands for. That's the only thing
what they died for.
But it's to me, to me, I'm saying this because everybody has different views of like your view is different with the flag and the national anthem. My view is different, but to me, for me, what it stands for is just that. For other people, it could stand for something different. The flag, that's what's so great about this country, is the flag can stand for whatever you want it to stand for because we live in a country that's free and just an amazing country. So that's what's so great about it.
I know you. Let me just say this. A person can look at the flag and they can make it be whatever they want it to be. But I want to clarify something for you. The flag stands for these United States. Unified. That's why all the little stars there are for each state.
Right.
The 13 stripes represent the original 13 colonies in between those different. You can go online and read what the flag.
No,
really,
I know what it stands. I know what it represents. When it comes to his history.
There's a reason why when we went to the moon, they hoisted the flag. There's a reason why when that very famous photo from World War II, with the men in Japan. Right. Take down the Japanese flag and put our flag after we overcome. Because what we did, what the flag represents, is freedom. It represents freedom. That's all. We want to represent democracies and freedom. And then if you understand what freedom is the individual rights to secure your place in this world.
No, I'm not saying that they don't have the right, because they have the right and they have the freedom. The flag does stand for freedom, and that's why they're able to do what they're doing. But I just don't like that they're doing it that way. That's all, But it does. It stands for freedom.
All I want you to understand. Last thing I want to say on that issue is to say this: opinions, and mine included, are just that. They're my opinion, they're your opinion.
Right.
I don't want my opinion to be asserted forcefully on anyone. I'd rather try to use a persuasive argument and have them accept it. If they don't, I will still defend and prepare to die for them to retain their ability to not only disagree, but to also go and pursue happiness in some other way that does not infringe on me or others.
So, man, when it comes to Survivor, if I ever got a chance to play with you, I think that I could. I think we would have a good time out there. But you never know, because things happen. When it happens out there, you don't know. It happens so fast, like things change. Like you said earlier, pre-game alliance is just not a good thing. You go out there and you do it,
Well, here's the thing with you, and I'm going to say this because I said it earlier, and a reference to Survivor, which is I don't assess what people tell me outside the game whatsoever. It's only when the game is on.
Right.
Andrea, look at Andrea. Andrea and I don't talk at all. Right? We're not buddies. We played twice together. I don't hear from her, and she doesn't hear from me. She's younger than me, and she's having a fabulous life doing whatever she's doing, and I'm doing my thing.
Right.
But when we get in the game and we're starting to play, we come together to do what we need to do to advance each other in the game.
Of course.
And we play pretty well that way. So, but I don't have to have some big, long, strategic thing with her to make that happen. She's smart enough. She's strategic. Like, Phillip can help me here. And I'm the same with her. Andrea can help me here. When she's young, she can do it. Then that's what you do in real life. You and I are doing it right now. You and I don't necessarily agree on everything in life, but we realize that, hey, Russell has a platform. He's got his show, podcast. I'm going to go on podcast. I'll talk a little bit. He'll talk to me. He'll promote my book, and I'll promote him. And some of what we're feeling is absolutely true. We do feel this way about each other, but let's face it, some of these things we're not going to agree on.
Of course.
So that's Survivor. And I believe personally, though, had you and I played in the game and you had made it to the merge, I have a feeling you and I would have chucked old Boston Rob.
Oh,
One of us
whoa.
would be a millionaire.
Yeah, boy. You might have won then if you're sitting there with me. You might be
Well,
winning.
here's the thing. I don't know if you. I know this much. I think you would have tried to do what Boston Rob did in that season had you advanced, which is you to recognize, like, okay.
I would have
I'm
taken you
merge.
100% to the end, definitely. And you would have beat me.
Well, here's
Because
the
I
thing.
seem to can't win at the end.
Well, I don't know what would have happened. I'm not going to predate that, but I know this. I know that the people in my tribe were not prepared to hear when I got to the end. The reason I remained in character, people say, what do you mean in character? I could have went to that final tribal the first time in that season 22 and said, hey, guys, I was just playing. I know I came off a little polarizing, a little crazy, but the fact of the matter is that, I was just playing to get to the end. As you know, I didn't manipulate any of you to be voted out of the game. Boston Rob here did this.
Right.
As you know, he's the one that made all the promises to you. He's the one that told you he's going to bring you all to the end. I knew that he couldn't bring everybody in, but, hey, I let him tell you what you wanted to hear. You heard it, and you got voted out. Don't blame me.
Right.
Come on, guys, give me the $1 million. They still, you know who tried to do that? The reason I didn't do that was 2 reasons. The season before mine, I just happened to watch that in season when the guy who went to the final tribal, you know what I'm talking about, he didn't give him one vote. With Fabio and
okay.
and Sash.
Yeah. Right.
Sash, remember Sash went to the final tribal and said, "Hey guys, I was just playing, okay? I hope you don't hold it against me. I'm just trying to get to this spot. I'm here now, so please vote for me." And give him one vote.
Right.
And I knew that these guys in my tribe would have preferred to lose against a guy who played 4 times, and then they could feel good about themselves and say, I lost to a 4-time player. He played 4 times. It's easier to do that than to say, hey, I lost to Phillip Sheppard. You know the guy that I said was crazy all season? I gave him $1 million.
Yeah, I hear you.
I knew they weren't going
Makes
to do
sense.
that. I knew they weren't going to do that. So I said, you know what? Tell them what I really think. Sit down, Ashley. Shut up.
Right.
And I would say whatever was on, that was on my mind, pretty much like, the way you and I discussed tonight. So it is what it is. I wouldn't change anything. But I do think that if you and I had played and you got to the end, I think that when you got to the merge, I think that you were smart enough and strategic enough to realize, like, hey, most of the people that are still in this game right now, they don't seem to be liking this guy anyway. And Boston Rob's done all the heavy lifting, getting them to believe that he's not the guy that he should be. So I'll bring him to the end, or at least I'll get him as close as I can until I don't need this guy no more. Right. So I think you and I would have done that. And I would have been thinking the other way, hey, guys, this guy. He knows how to get to the end. You see how he plays. He plays with all the girls. He gets all the pretty girls. We got to get rid of some of these girls. But I tell you what, before we do that, let's get rid of Russell.
Right.
So that would have been my strategy in that particular game.
Right.
If you and I just showed up on his ceilings now, which I feel like CBS should call me and say, Phillip, I'm prepared to pay you a whole lot of money to come back and play.
Never know.
With Russell and all these great guys. And guess what? We're going to call it Legends. Legends.
The legends of the game.
If you and I happen to end up at some point, in a game scenario like that where you and I were playing, now this is ruining because I'm telling them what I would do right now, which is because I don't think it's going to happen actually. But so I'm going to go ahead and say it. But if that had occurred, I would try to play with you in the game.
Right.
I would definitely try to leverage your ability to pull to work the magic you work. I would be creating what we call the distraction, hopefully not alienating, so that if I got there, they could still cast a few votes for me because they realize he's just playing the game, Survivor, right? But there's a thing where if you got Phillip Sheppard in the game, you saw that I don't get credit for, but it's true. In both times I played, Stealth R Us Alliance made it to the end.
Right.
So if I'm so bad, why is that alliance that I'm aligning myself with getting to the end?
Right. All right, man. Well, Phillip, I sure appreciate you coming on the show, and you guys need to check out Phillip's Twitter page. It has his book on there. You can check out his book. As part of the proceeds go to the
T Sheppard TV.
Okay.
The
And
Twitter page is T Sheppard TV.
Okay, and
the book is The Legend of Things Past, and it's on Amazon.
Hopefully, I see you soon, man. I'll be coming to LA hopefully pretty soon. Right now, we're dealing with all this hurricane stuff, so I couldn't make it this time. But
no worries.
All right, man. Well, you have yourself a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, man. Later. Become a Patreon and get more content and bonus episodes, including video commentary of every episode of Survivor Samoa, weekly episodes of Whining with Wine, and you can become a Patreon for as low as $5. $5 gets you Russell's Alliance, 10 and you become a game changer. 25 and you're a legend. Go to patreon.com/Russell Hantz.